Hey, Michel, welcome to the show.
Hello, great to be here. Nice
So
to meet you.
awesome to have you. Yes, I love our male guests because I
We
am
are few.
on the everyday discussion of what is femtech. I always have to say it is not just female founders because radical idea, every gender should care about women's health. And I know your product isn't only for women's health, but definitely has a priority there. And so I'm just so grateful to have you. You're helping me shift paradigms.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And you're calling in from San Diego, you said, right?
Yes, I'm in San Diego.
Cool, cool. Well, we always love to kickstart these episodes with learning about our guests, right? So, a lot of people don't major in femtech, right? So, we somehow end
Sure.
up here. So, tell us where you're from. What did you study? Did you have a career before this? And then, how did you end up here?
Sure. So, again, I'm founder and CEO of Cicalux. And I was born here in San Diego, California. I would call myself a first and a half generation immigrant, Mexican American. I was born here, but my first 2 years I lived in Mexico, across the border in Tijuana.
Oh,
So I was about 3 years old when the entire family moved back up to San Diego. So we're five boys, no girls in the family. So how I got into femtech eventually is a mystery, but probably just a good old curiosity because, of course, I knew nothing about women growing up. Uh, Besides, of course, my mother, who probably has a lot to do with what I'm doing today. She was a very strong influence. She had a very warm and a strong personality, but she was a big women's rights activist in the 70s, and she was always very entrepreneurial. So I think that's where some of my entrepreneurial background came from.
oh, mom.
Um, so, we're talking about, we're talking femtech here, and women going back to the 70s and attempting to start businesses and going against the odds, and especially minorities and women.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're even facing this today in IT and medtech. I was reading the other day that I think only 18% of women or executives in medtech are women today. And so imagine how it was 30 years ago. And it's not so good for minorities either. We have 3% Latinos in medtech in executive roles, 2% Black. So I think there's a lot we can do here. So I'm glad to be at least maybe some positive influence to the listeners who may be women, entrepreneurs, or minorities.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And because if you don't have that perspective at the table, we are always just going to innovate for white people, specifically affluent white people. Unless
Right.
someone's there at the table and says, that actually doesn't work for Mexican American women, or that doesn't work in our culture or our religion or our bodies, if we want
Exactly.
women at the table, right? Women can't be
Sure.
like, that won't work for us. So thank you so much for being at the table.
Sure. And how I got to medtech was kind of strange. Both of my parents were big on IT back in the 70s, and my mom actually started a microcomputer business. So all of us five boys at one time or another worked for her, getting paid basically nothing because we were just trying to struggle and get through.
Ah, yeah.
But we did learn and learn and learn, even though we didn't make any money at it. Uh, Here, my friends are over there painting houses at $10 an hour, and we're making about $10 a week.
Oh my
But we learned a lot in IT and microcomputers and so forth. And this is way before the IBM PC, way before the Apple II. So that was, ultimately a great experience. But I'm the one that kind of broke off and got into medtech early on, and studied business. Eventually got my MBA and so forth. And I've been in medtech now for over 25 years.
cool. Have you ever worked on a woman's product, a women-centered design product before?
No. We started off. My first medtech was in dialysis devices. So this anybody with kidney failure. Um, and that's where I thought, wow, this whole industry has a direct and profound impact on people's lives
Mhm.
and health and well-being. And so that's one thing I really appreciated about this industry, and I stuck to it. But nothing specifically geared toward women until more recently with Cicalux.
Yeah. I love that you said, I like working on something that has real life impact. Like maybe within the next year, it could affect people's lives because as a geneticist, PhD geneticist myself, there's like this expectation that your publication, maybe it'll influence some drug in 20 years, which will then get approved in another 10 years. So it's like, I don't have the patience for that. Like I want to work on something that I know like someone's going to benefit I could meet them. Right. So I totally appreciate that.
Great.
I had a question about your heritage and if it had any influence on your comfortability working in women's health. Do you think that, you said your mom was like this feminist and like total, like ahead of her time, pioneer. Thank you to her on my behalf. Do you think that being, Mexican American helps you talk about women's health, or is that a hindrance? I'm just kind of curious about that. What do you think?
Boy, I think it had more to do with not growing up in a environment full of women,
Yeah.
besides my mother. So it's more of that curiosity that got into this.
Yeah.
And with the specific product, a lot of the doctors that we talked to early on thought the women's health segment was probably the most important area we can help with this kind of product, Cicalux.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a combination of those two things, as well as my own experience with scar and scar products. So, a different combination of things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into it. What is Cicalux? What do you guys do?
So Cicalux is a award-winning. It's won multiple awards in several countries. It's now U.S. patented as of a couple of weeks ago, and it's a scar therapy device that works on both old and new scars.
Okay.
And we're targeting in the women's health such surgeries as cesarean sections, tummy tucks, breast reconstruction. So we designed the product gearing or focused on those type of incisional surgeries. And so what it does is help the scar heal better, feel better, and look better. You use it 2-3 weeks following surgery once the wound has been closed and dry. It's a product not only for the aesthetic benefit of the scar, but also for some of the physical issues. We've had a lot of women report back that it's helped improve their pain, their itching, the tugging, the rigidity, the roughness, and these other discomforts that have been bothering them, sometimes for months, sometimes for years.
Yeah.
And so this is how we see it playing in both roles: look better, feel better, and of course, heal better. So again, it's a very innovative device. Most scar therapy products today are based on a silicone sheet approach, which actually is meant to provide a better hydration to the underlying tissue, and that's fine and it helps. But we've added a few more technologies and therapies onto one device. We've added heat therapy, we've added tension relief, we've added pressure therapy, and all these things are well known for the wound and scar healing process.
I have a bunch of questions already. This is
Sure.
so fascinating. I love how this falls into that category that we see a lot of femtech companies addressing, which is, you have an illness and you get treated for it, or you have an incident and you get, fixed up via stitches or whatever. And then the medical system is like, okay, like go live your life. And there's all of these side effects from your chemotherapy, from the surgery, from the stitches, from whatever. And the rest of your life, women are expected to just kind of like be grateful they're alive or be grateful they have a baby. And oh, you're upset about that. That's so little. But at FemTech Focus, we like to say women deserve it all. We deserve a well life, not just one that we live in, but we thrive in, right? So I love that you're addressing that part, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. When we first got into this, I had no idea that, the studies have shown 91% of people that have undergone some kind of surgery are not happy or pleased with their resulting scar, and they would even value a small improvement. And there's hundreds of millions of these surgeries per year, of course. And so, I was also surprised that when you read the papers or you interview the surgeons, a lot of the surgeons, oh, well, my scars always come out great. And yet they don't see the patient 3 months after the surgery. They see them a few weeks after. But then you ask the same patient the question, and it's the inverse. Like, no, I'm not really happy with this resulting scar. And so, it's a real big issue in this area.
Absolutely. And just to tell a personal story real quick, I had just turned 13 and I had a cyst on my ovary that I needed surgery to have removed. And I think I'm like one of the last people who had a surgery that wasn't just through my belly button in this case. And so I have a probably at least 3-inch long scar right on, the top of, oh man, I'm the FemTech Focus founder. I don't even know what you would call that front area. Do you know what that's called?
What, in your abdominal area?
Yeah. Well, so my lower abdominal area, I have this 3-inch scar, and throughout my teenage years, as I know now, that is not probably what a cesarean scar looks like. But as a teenager, I had this thing in my head that said, oh my God, if anyone sees this, they're going to think that I had a baby. I had all of these, like I'm growing into my young woman body and I already had a scar on it and was just kind of like, oh, I wonder what people will think. And I felt like I needed to, my first sexual encounters, I was like excusing it and stuff. And now I'm like, whatever, but it's still there. It's still there. I'm 29,
Okay, we'll have to send you a Cicalux.
Believe me, when I was prepping for this interview, I was like, maybe I should do this. How many decades after can I try this? As I'm coming up on 2 decades and I still have this thing that now I'm like, whatever. I'm, I talk about vulvas all day, but at the time it was impactful on my body that I was needing essentially. So let's talk about the mechanics of it. What is a scar actually? And how does your treatment help it not like go away?
Yeah. So, just not to get too technical, but there's 4 stages of wound healing. So, the very first stage is hemostasis. In other words, get the bleeding to stop. That's what your body does immediately with your platelets and so forth. And then the second stage, your macrophages or white blood cells come in and clean up whatever is there. And the first fibroblasts come in. This is basically the scar tissue. And, the body's role is to try to fill up that wound as quick as possible so it's sealed off from the outside bacteria, so you get this crust and so forth, and fill in the wound with all these fibroblasts and such, and vascularity and angiogenesis that goes along with this process. So it doesn't really care how messy that process is as long as it's doing its job in sealing it off.
Yeah, evolution was not prioritizing beauty of your skin.
Right.
It was just like close the hole. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't realize that this happens all in the first 3-4 weeks following the wound. But then you go into this very long process, which is stage 4 of wound healing, of remodeling. And this is where this tissue and the fibroblasts and so forth, everything's remodeling. And that's where you see some of these problems. We start seeing hypertrophic scars. Hypertrophic are the raised scars, as opposed to hypotrophic, which are the sunken scars, which is what I have on my face. And so we're dealing with keeping the scar flat, smooth, soft, so it doesn't become hypertrophic, or it doesn't become raised. It doesn't become hyperpigmented. But if the scars aren't treated well, and what we're trying to do is hopefully more surgeons will educate patients on how to care for your scar once you go home and you don't see the surgeon anymore. You're at home for the next few months and you're on your own.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure more and more surgeons educate or give them, at least your patients, tips on how to care for your scar once you go home.
I don't remember any any tips.
Yeah, we try to educate in our blog and so forth about this, and I think there's more and more of that happening, but it wasn't happening in the past. I think a lot of the surgeons were, okay, it's sealed, it's not infected, I did my job. Yes, you're going to have a scar, and just live with it.
Yeah.
And but it's not just aesthetic, as I said earlier. I've had many women, professionals, midwives. They come to us and say, my scar's itchy, my scar's tuggy, it feels bad.
It can be painful. I actually had I love to work with rescue dogs, and I did break up a dog fight once, and I got bit, and I got bit on the back of my leg, and it fine, whatever, it healed up, but I did have 4 puncture wounds on the back of my leg, and it was probably 18 months afterwards. So over a year and a half afterwards, I still had these 4 little like nodules, like almost looks like dimples on the back of my thigh. And they hurt so bad, like you couldn't touch them. And I was getting into essential oils at the time, and my friend said, get lavender, and every night you're just going to have to break up the scar tissue and rub it out. And it was so painful, but I opted for that every evening, like with heat and pressing and lavender, because every day I was I couldn't touch the back of my thigh, or anyone else could touch it. And it actually worked out. So this heat thing, I'm like, I'm a believer. Yeah, send me your thing. That would be much better than rubbing it out. But it was painful. It was painful.
Yeah, no, most of the time, most doctors will admit scar therapy still has many unmet needs. There is no great product, but they do say if you can combine therapies, and especially onto one product like we have, that's the approach. It's a combination therapy approach. You got to hydrate, you got to massage, you got to heat, you have to work it, because you're trying to remodel that tissue in a way that's more natural.
Yeah.
And so we're fortunate in that our product has been shown to work both on very old scars as well as the newer scars, which are generally a lot easier to treat. Yeah. But I think our claim to fame will be that it also works on old scars, because we're really putting a lot of technology and therapies onto one device to make it happen.
Amazing. Tell me about like women specific scars. So we have the C-section scar. How big is a C-section scar, and where is it on the body?
Sure. So cesarean section scars typically about 12 centimeters in length. Okay. So oftentimes this will be the most significant surgery a young woman will ever have. Yeah. That's why a lot of our doctor advisors said focus on this market first, because there's 2 million women in the US alone that undergo cesarean section today, not to mention the 20 plus other million women around the world every year.
Yeah.
And then you have also all the other types of surgeries, the tummy tucks and the breast reconstruction. So all these types of linear scars is what our product has been designed for.
Yeah.
So, so our product is 6 inches in length to cover a standard cesarean section scar down, of course, in the pelvic area.
Mm-hmm. And what about hysterectomies? What's the scar from that look like?
Well, that's becoming a little more minimally invasive now. So, but in the past, there was more of the traditional incisional surgery.
Yeah.
So there's still probably a lot of people out there that have these older scars in that respect.
But the cesarean, you need to kind of cut it open because you're getting a baby out, right?
Yeah. So that's there. I always tell people there'll never be a minimally invasive way to pull the baby out. Whoever comes up with that, I'm sure will do well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you need about 12 centimeters generally. Yeah.
when you have, so your product has, like you said, won all these awards. What are women telling you? Like, how has it changed their life in a psychological way, emotional, physical? Tell us more about the feedback you've gotten.
Sure. So when we first came up with the concept, this is where our parent company is Belgian based, so we're mostly in France and Belgium in the first year in terms of getting it out to professionals, OBGYNs, midwives, which over there they're called sage-femme. And so the first scientific congress we attended with our first product concept was one of the major OBGYN congresses in France. And, over there, they're not so shy about showing what they have. And
Huh?
a sage-femme came up and was very curious. She kind of pulled down her pants and said, "Hey, can you help with this scar?"
Yeah.
And it was, I think, a 5-year-old scar at the time.
Mhm.
Uh, and I looked at it and first surprised that she would pull her pants down in front of a man. But that's France,
Yeah.
Uh, and
No body shame in France.
uh, and we said, well, your scar actually looks pretty good. It was a little hypertrophic in one area, a little hyperpigmented. And we said, well, why don't you give it a try? You're a professional. Maybe it'll help with the discomfort. And so, 3 or 4 weeks later, she reported back, just astounded that she saw so much benefit. It was flatter, smoother. It didn't bother her so much.
Mhm.
It itched a little less. And, right then we knew that we had something interesting because this wasn't an old established scar.
Yeah.
And then, but I was one of the first guinea pigs because I had 8 years ago, uh, a mole removed from the back of my shoulder,
Uh-huh.
and I'm a Latino, so a little more the darker skin folks scar worse. I don't know if you know that, as well as redheads and Irish
Interesting.
descent also scar pretty badly compared to Caucasian.
And
But
that's not
anyway,
due to skin pigmentation because you
no,
just
it just got right. It's just this
biology and genetics.
genetic and biology.
Oh.
So I treated my scar, and I knew that, and it's flattened, it's softened, it was really hyperpigmented, a bright red, and it helped on the pigmentation. So I knew we were onto something even back then when we had our first prototypes. So anyway, so the rest is history. We after the scientific congress, one of the leading OBGYNs, he's the chief of the OBGYN department in one of the major hospitals in Paris. He's like, hey, I'd like to try this on my Cesarean section patients.
Uh-huh.
So we arranged a small study, and he did it on some of his own patients where he performed the surgery and sent them home with this after their last checkup. Once the incision and the stitches have been removed and the wound was closed and dried, he sent them home with the Cicalux kit, and they reported back very nice results. So he's been recommending the product even through today. So this is all um, the early research, testing, and development with professionals in the medical industry, and that validation then led us into getting into these award programs where more and more women around the world evaluate the product, test it on themselves, and we call this real world evidence, which is
Uh-huh.
very important for a product that's, it is over the counter, so people can buy it online without a prescription
Yep.
and use it at home. So we had to really test the real world environment of people just having the product without any nurse or any doctor intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And do they find it easy to use? Do they find it safe and effective? And so far, so good.
How many scars do you think you've treated?
Boy, we've already shipped thousands. So, and we've been very deliberate in that because it's our first product of the company and it's a medical device. We want to be very careful on how we roll this out. So we rolled it out in a very methodical way, And so now, there's hundreds of people that have used it on their scars, and including men, but
Yeah.
primarily I'd say 95% are women between age 20 and 40 with tummy tuck, cesarean section, even breast surgery.
You said it's a med device, so is it FDA approved? Like, did you need to go through some regulatory?
Yeah, so it's a medical device class 1, so we had to put together an entire clinical evidence report, a whole technical file, and we first got it approved in Europe under over there they call it a CE mark.
Okay.
And that's you get that through a notified body. It's kind of like the FDA, but they're called notified bodies there, and competent authorities. And then with the FDA, it's a class 1, so it was cleared here under an FDA registration because it's equivalent to other, call it scar therapy devices that use silicone.
Yeah.
So all of that was done by just at the start of 2020 here in the US.
Wow.
And so we just started rolling it out in the US just a couple months ago. It's available on Amazon now.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Why did you go direct to consumer instead of through a doctor?
Yeah, well, we have many channels. We just hired someone a couple months ago, that is working on the professional medical channels. So through the OBGYNs, physical therapists, plastic surgeons, all these folks, because here in the United States, you can dispense product through some of these channels. In France, for example, you cannot dispense products through a physician.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's a different model over there, but over here we can do that. So that's part of our strategy. We did have, we were registered on some of the major trade shows in 2020 to debut the product to the professional community, but they were all canceled.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So that's all been postponed a year. And we kind of, you always, with FemTech, all the leaders out there, you have to pivot in times of crisis. And so we pivoted toward the D2C, direct to consumer channel, and put a little bit more emphasis on that, and just started that a couple months ago.
Amazing. Yeah. The reason I ask is because we have a lot of early stage founders that, will ask me in my office hours, like, should I go through doctors? Should I go through customers? Should, if I say I'm going to do both, investors say I'm not focused, like, which one should I do? So I love hearing your feedback on that.
Although, most of the experts today will agree that you do need to go for an omnichannel approach. So you have to consider all the channels. How much you focus on each one depends on your resource allocation. But you do have to go these days omni-channel for almost everything.
That's what I tell them. I say, don't limit yourself, right? Because you don't know what your traction is yet, especially if you're in the early stages. You don't know. Maybe it's consumers only buy it if their doctor recommends, but you wouldn't know that unless you did it, right?
Right.
Right. Or like maybe doctors are like, I don't really care about my patient scars that much to really recommend this, but there's all these women on Amazon looking for scar treatment stuff. So it's like, you got to kind of be able to capture and see and get the data on which one's actually working for you.
Well, just a case in point, last 2 days, there was a major aesthetic technology summit. So it brought together some of the leading, both clinicians, major industry, the large companies that work in the aesthetic field, as well as entrepreneurs and startups. And, one of the main discussion points of the opening panel session was we still have a lot of unmet needs in scar therapy. And so they're now realizing that more and more that these patients are going home and looking on the internet for something to do with their scar.
Yeah.
So it's that's a good for us. That's now starting to happen more and more.
Mm-hmm. You said earlier that there was a kit. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what's in the kit?
Sure. So I don't know if you can see that, but that's the Cicalux product. And we designed it to be a 60-day kit, so 60 days of therapy. It includes a special silicone band that's reusable for the entire time. So this is very unique. Most silicone products you have to throw away after 1 week, and you end up, piling them up in a landfill somewhere. But this, we've designed it so it's robust and reusable for the entire 60 days of therapy.
Oh my gosh, sustainability. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's, oftentimes people ask, well, especially with consumers today, they want to buy responsibly too. They want to buy eco-friendly.
That's right.
So we took all that into account. We also want pro-hygienic products, especially you're placing these products down in areas where you can get yeast infections and so forth. So we designed a special 100% cotton tension relief tape that works specifically with this product to provide tension relief and a pressure therapy to the underlying scar tissue. So two very important things, but yet it's biodegradable, and you toss it out one a day because this is the part that contains the sticky elements, the attachment.
Yep.
And, one thing you don't want to do is try to wash bacteria, virus, fungus off a sticky surface and then put it back on your body. I mean, most products today, you have to wash the silicone, all the sticky, and then put it back on your skin for day after day after day.
Like washing a Band-Aid and then trying to put it back.
Exactly. So we've taken an entirely different approach that is gross. It's gunky, icky. And we went with, no, we are, coming as a medical device person, we want pro-hygienic approaches.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we have the last component that goes inside this nest area, is what we call it, is we have a special heat therapy stone that you pop in the microwave for about 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, depending on your microwave. And it provides a nice soothing heat therapy to the scarred tissue, which improves vasodilation, so increases blood to the area, which promotes healing and remodeling. Yeah. And it's also great for massaging your scar tissue, which is also important in scar therapy. So all these elements combined is what makes Cicalux, what it is.
So amazing. And so you said earlier about the scar being itchy, and I imagine, of course, it's itchy in the beginning stages of healing, like a scab or whatever. I can understand that, but you said in this case it was a woman with like a 5-year-old scar. Why would an old scar be itchy?
Yeah, that's it's a mystery in many ways. Really? Some have it, some don't. Maybe it could just be because of how the nerves were damaged in the area too. And, so everything, no matter what part of your body, there's always regeneration happening and remodeling. And so if we can help with that remodeling with what we're doing, I think that's what helps with all these other issues.
Yeah.
But have we studied that in detail? I don't think anybody really has. But we just know what's been reported back to us.
Yeah. What are some of the future goals for your company?
So we do have the Cicalux is a patented device, so it represents an entire product line. So what I showed you today is just the very basic initial model. We do have I don't know if you can see this, but this is what we call the control unit for the Cicalux Plus version.
Okay.
And this will snap in also to the same exact band to provide a special programmed red light therapy.
Whoa. Yeah, listeners, you're definitely going to have to check out the recorded interview on YouTube, because this thing is glowing red. It looks super futuristic.
Yeah, so this has built-in, we developed it, it's completely custom. It's a specialized PCB with all kinds of chips and biosensors. So this is how the idea started. We just made a simpler version to bring out to market first. But the Cicalux Plus is pretty sexy. It's programmable. It provides a photobiomodulation therapy, which is big these days, otherwise known as red light or blue light therapy.
Uh-huh.
And so we have ideas beyond just scar therapy. This could be used for such things as photodynamic therapy, which is a skin cancer therapy
Whoa.
that uses photoactivated molecules in the drug that's placed on the skin, and you need to have a special
Oh,
light product to activate the
that's
drug.
yes.
So we're hoping, because I'm a big believer in home therapy and not all your therapies done in the clinic.
Yep.
And if we can provide devices that are safe, easy to use at home, at your convenience, and that are hands-free. I'm a big believer in our product works while you sleep. Our product works while you're exercising.
Yep.
Our product works while you're at work.
Yep. Helping your kids at homework, doing the dishes. Yeah.
Because I learned way early on in my career in medtech that if someone has to take a therapy where they have to interrupt their day by 30 minutes, let's say, most people don't want to do that, and they don't do it.
Yeah.
I was working with a lot in ophthalmic and glaucoma, where people have to take their eye drops or they go blind. But 50% of people do not adhere to their eye drop regimen.
Oh my God.
Because it's just a hassle for many. And you can tell them, please take your eye drops, you're going to go blind. They just, after a while, they say, you know what, it's just too much of a hassle.
Wow. Wow.
So even with that, so you can imagine all these other therapies that could be great, but if the people or the patient do not adhere to it, then it's doing nobody any good.
Definitely. And I love at-home therapies because it increases the chances of accessibility, especially for women of, in colored communities that may not have access to an OB-GYN down the street, or they have to take a bus there, or they don't have childcare. But is your price point at such either now or in the future going to be so that it is very much accessible?
Yeah. So, we like to compare with other technologies. We are priced as a premium product because of all the technology and value and benefit that we packed into it for 60 days. So it's about, €1 a day or $1 a day roughly of therapy, which is quite accessible. It's just what happens. Sometimes you compare with maybe a really inexpensive basic silicone sheet that's on the market for $25. But what they don't realize is, well, you have to use many of those sheets to get the same benefit.
Yeah.
So if you do all the calculations, we're in a good price value range.
Do you think that Medicaid and insurances would ever cover this?
No, but the flexible spending accounts, those have been opening up more and more to even women's hygiene products. So you can use your pre-tax dollars if you have a cafeteria plan or flexible spending account, and to get for these types of products.
Cool.
And this scar treatment products are in that. You can buy, save your invoice, and then submit it to get your reimbursement.
Interesting. Well, this has been so informative. I would love to try your product out, and I would even do a blog, record of it, because this stuff wasn't even thought about, and no one even talked to my 13-year-old self about it. So this is really, really great work.
Great. No, we'd be glad to send you. I'll have my community manager send you.
Perfect. I will
a sample.
Video blog this. I will vlog it. Definitely.
Yeah, she handles all the bloggers and all the folks.
All right. Cool. We're doing it. We have two last questions that our listeners love. First one is, if somebody wanted to start a FemTech company, what's an area in women's health and wellness that still needs innovating, in your opinion?
Boy, well, I've been hearing a lot lately about sexual wellness. That's, I think, a big field. I think it's a subject that's less taboo these days. COVID, I think, has accelerated the interest in these types of products. So, who knows? Maybe we may even have something in the future works. Also, some of these more widespread issues, like we have a program for dry eye, which
Mhm.
affects up to 50% of the world's population, especially now that we're spending a lot more
Oh yeah.
screen time. So, I would say that these areas are quite interesting, and we may not do anything in sexual wellness for some time, but other people out there could find opportunities there, I think.
Well, I mean, I can already see the correlation between scarring in the vagina due to an injury or surgery or labor and that scar tissue. I mean, that is not pleasurable to have it be hit or rubbed or, whatever. And so,
True. Yeah, it's one of the complications of a cesarean section can be discomfort during sex and so forth, especially long term. So
mhm,
that came out in the research. So
yeah,
yeah, we're trying to help these women get the best possible scar outcome.
yeah,
That's all we're trying to do, regardless of what type of surgery they had, um, or the reasons why they had the surgery. We're just trying to help them have something better because oftentimes they've been ignored. I mean,
yeah,
just case in point, as part of the 2 years of research, uh, I attended, and some of my team members attended some of the largest scar and wound congresses in Europe and the
okay,
United States. And time again, there's always a segment where the dermatologists or the plastic surgeons will bring some of their patients in to
uh-huh,
show the scientific audience the scar outcomes and use them as an example of what kind of therapy can we do on this type of scar.
yeah,
And 90% of the time, it was young to middle-aged women with obvious physical and psychological discomforts. And to me, it was quite quite heavy to see
yeah,
some very very bad scarring outcomes, only because oftentimes they didn't know what to do after the injury,
yeah,
um, and so they get to this point of being quite desperate for a solution. And they would stand in front of the audience and pull up their shirt, and that took a lot of courage, but
yeah,
it affected me and my team to say, hey, we got to come up with something that at least can help some of these women.
yeah, yeah.
So here we are.
And our last question is, what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Whew. Well, I always tell people, first you have the basics. You have to have this idea or product serving some unmet need.
Mhm.
You got to make sure that it's scalable and have sufficient margin or profit margin. You got to make sure it's safe and effective because oftentimes these products are used at home, not just in the clinic.
Yeah.
Um, so that means it has to be super easy to use.
Super
Because
user error, man. User
oh
error.
my God, that's the easy of all the we've had about 90 doctors in France review this at the very beginning,
Mhm.
and almost what they liked about it immediately, what they liked about Cicalux is its ease of use because they said, you know what, I can just send them home with this product and not worry about them calling me or my nurse
Yeah.
to explain how to use it
Yep.
or at risk of using it improperly.
Mhm.
And that's what they like innovations that are super simple and easy to use. So that's
Yep.
my if it's any of my input, that's probably one of the most important because if it's not, it's not going to sell and people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, I had a consumer facing startup at one point that involved a at-home DNA test, and that was the point of my life where I had to dramatically decrease my expectations of humans because no matter how detailed the instructions were, no matter how easy we made it, 10% of them still messed it up. And I was like, oh my God, like, oh
no,
my God, how do people
no,
put furniture together? Like, if they don't understand this,
no,
like,
I try to say, we try to use the IKEA approach, just use visual diagrams. We have videos, but to this day, we've had people, oh, I bought this for my stretch marks, but no, this is for scar. This product is not for stretch marks. And so you get all kinds of consumers putting all
yeah,
kinds of strange reviews because of just they don't read or want to watch anything.
Expectations of humans, listeners, decrease it.
But I would say that, once what do you need to be successful? You got to have those basics down, and then you have to have all that, that grit, that courage, that hope, because you're always kind of pivoting and you're trying to innovate. And sometimes the channel you thought was going to work best is the channel there's another channel that worked even better. So I just have to say, just focus, be patient, and keep innovating.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.